All right, so are you ready for this?
I think so. Hit me.
Okay, we're doing a deep dive into the downfall of Sean Diddy Combs.
Wow. Yeah, that's
It's a big one.
it is, and it's complicated.
It is, and we got a ton of stuff from you guys. Articles, social media posts, and even some legal documents. We're talking accusations, shady business, and even potential federal charges.
Yeah, and this is someone who, for a long time was really seen as like the definition of success, right? The hit maker, the entrepreneur.
Right, building an empire.
Exactly. But even with all that, there were always like these whispers, weren't there?
Yeah, there were whispers. So let's talk about those whispers. What do we know? What have we heard?
Well, it's really important, I think, to understand that Diddy's carefully crafted image, the philanthropy and the whole black empowerment thing, it always kind of existed alongside this darker narrative.
Okay, so let's get into that darker narrative. So what about his business practices? What about his treatment of artists, specifically in the hip-hop community?
Right. And these aren't just some random rumors. We're
Yeah.
talking about people like Eminem, 50 Cent, Kanye West.
Big names.
Yeah, big names who have come out and directly criticized Diddy's business dealings. They use words like exploitative, predatory.
That's serious.
Yeah, when you have that level of consistency, from people with that kind of platform, it makes you think, right, about the power dynamics at play, especially in the music industry.
So it sounds like this part of his reputation was sort of an open secret within the industry.
Yeah, you could say that.
But then things take a really tragic turn in 2018 with the death of Kim Porter, Diddy's longtime partner and the mother of his children.
Right, and officially, her death was attributed to pneumonia. But there's been so much speculation and so many unanswered questions.
Yeah, like what kinds of questions?
Well, the delayed autopsy, the fact that the coroner was changed.
Right.
And there were even rumors that Kim was working on a tell-all book before she died.
Oh, wow.
Now, none of this is conclusive evidence of anything. But you can see how it would fuel suspicion, right? Especially given the existing unease around Diddy.
Yeah, absolutely. It just adds to it. And then in 2023, things kind of explode with Cassie Ventura's lawsuit. This wasn't just a typical celebrity breakup. This was a 35-page bombshell alleging years of abuse, violence, and even trafficking.
Yeah, and I think Ventura's lawsuit was a real turning point. It made people pay attention. And the fact that Diddy initially denied everything and then very quickly settled for $30 million, it just raises even more questions.
Like, was he trying to just make it go away?
Exactly, silence her, avoid any further scrutiny. And we should mention, the lawsuit contains some really graphic and disturbing allegations.
Like what?
Well, one example is this thing she calls freak-offs.
Freak-offs.
Yeah, essentially it was these drug-fueled sexual encounters that often involved male sex workers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Ventura alleges that she was forced to participate in these, to find the sex workers, and basically facilitate these events for Diddy's gratification.
So just to be clear here, she's alleging that she was forced to participate in these, not that this was some sort of consensual arrangement.
Right, exactly. It's important to understand the weight of those accusations.
Absolutely. And this wasn't the first time he faced accusations like this, was it?
Right, it wasn't. But it seems like Ventura's lawsuit and the media attention it got, it kind of opened the floodgates.
Okay, so there's a pattern emerging here.
Definitely.
And there's one particular incident that really stands out to me. The case of Shine, a young artist signed to Diddy's Bad Boy Records who served 10 years for a crime a lot of people believe he didn't commit. And Diddy actually testified against Shine, didn't he?
Yeah, he was present at the scene and chose to testify against him. And that incident really paints a dark picture, doesn't it? It raises serious questions about his loyalty, his ethics, and whether he was more concerned with protecting himself than with the truth.
It does. It makes you wonder what else he might be capable of.
Exactly. And unfortunately, as we'll see, the Shine incident is just one piece of a much larger and more disturbing puzzle. Diddy's story, it's really something. It's ambition, it's talent, this absolute drive to succeed. He comes from poverty in Harlem, and then he becomes this huge force in the music industry. He's got wealth, power. It's like the American dream, right? But like we said, there's this dark side, and it goes way back.
So let's rewind a bit. Let's talk about the early days. His big break was with Uptown Records, right?
Exactly. He moved up fast. He was known for finding talent, knowing how to market it, promote it. But even back then, there were those rumors about how he did business.
Like what kinds of rumors?
Oh, taking credit for other people's work, exploiting artists to make himself richer, that kind of thing.
So the red flags, they were there from the beginning.
I'd say so. His time at Uptown, yeah, there was success, but also this undercurrent of shady dealings. And it's around this time that you start to see what some people called his ruthless ambition. Like he'd do anything to get to the top.
Okay, so those early warning signs were there. And then in 1997, Biggie Smalls is killed.
Tragic.
Right.
All right.
And he was signed to Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records.
Right. A huge turning point. Look, Diddy was never officially implicated in Biggie's death. But the whole thing, the circumstances, his actions afterwards, it's always been this cloud of mystery and speculation.
Because he didn't seem that upset. Right. Like publicly. It didn't match the whole loyalty, brotherhood image he had built.
Exactly. It just didn't add up for people. It made you wonder what he was hiding.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's that whole thing with Shine. You mentioned him before, the artist Diddy signed.
Right. Shined. So much potential. And he ends up doing 10 years for a shooting that, well, many believe he wasn't even involved in.
And Diddy testified against him.
He did. He was there that night, and he testified against Shine.
Wow. So that just solidifies the image of Diddy as someone who would, throw someone under the bus to save himself.
Right. It's like a pattern emerging. You see with the rumors about his business practices, the questions about loyalty, and always distancing himself from anything that could hurt him.
It's pretty ruthless. And yet his career just kept getting bigger. He became a cultural icon. How did he manage to keep that positive image going with all this other stuff happening?
I think, honestly, it comes down to how good he was at controlling his image. He was brilliant at promoting himself, building this persona around philanthropy, entrepreneurship, Black empowerment.
So kind of using good deeds to cover up the bad stuff.
In a way, yeah. I mean, look, donating to schools, starting charities, those things are great. But they also serve to deflect attention from anything negative.
And it worked.
It did. The public bought into the Diddy brand. They saw the success, the charisma, and they were willing to overlook the rumors. We can't forget the media either. For years, they just focused on his successes. They didn't dig too deep.
Because it was good for them too, right? Access to Diddy, to his world.
Right. They helped build this myth of the self-made man. So then it's even harder for people to believe the accusations when they finally come out. But those cracks, they were always there. And then Cassie Ventura's lawsuit, that's when it all starts to fall apart.
It's like this carefully constructed image, this facade, it finally shatters. And now he's facing the consequences.
Exactly. And they're big consequences. Lawsuits, federal charges, everyone turning against him.
It's a huge fall from grace.
It is. But this isn't just about one guy's alleged crimes.
What do you mean?
It's bigger than that. This is about the entertainment industry, the abuse of power that goes on, the silence that protects it.
Are we all kind of complicit then? Like we see these celebrities, we admire them. Are we too quick to forgive them?
That's the question, isn't it? Are we willing to hold our idols accountable, even when it means questioning everything we thought we knew?
So we talked about Diddy's rise, the image he built, how it all came crashing down. But we need to go deeper into those allegations from Ventura's lawsuit.
Yeah, let's do that. Because that's where the real story lies, the heart of it all.
So let's get into those allegations from Cassie Ventura. Because like you said, her lawsuit really seems to be the catalyst for everything that's unfolded since then.
It definitely brought Diddy's alleged actions to light in a way that we hadn't seen before. And the details, they're pretty disturbing.
One thing that stood out, you mentioned those freak-offs earlier. Can we talk about that a bit more? What exactly are we talking about here?
Sure. So freak-offs, as Ventura describes them, were basically these drug-fueled, orgies that Diddy would set up and control.
And she alleges she was forced to participate.
Right, exactly. And not only participate, but also find the people for these events.
Find the people.
Yeah, like procure sex workers, make all the arrangements.
Oh, wow.
And it's important to understand, this isn't just about infidelity or, a messy open relationship or something. Ventura is saying she was coerced into these situations, often under the influence of drugs and alcohol.
Right, that's a whole different level of messed up.
Yeah, it really points to this deep level of control and manipulation that goes way beyond a typical bad relationship. And it's not like she's describing these as isolated incidents either. Ventura alleges this was a pattern, this abuse. There was physical violence, emotional manipulation. She says he controlled her finances.
So like classic coercive control, breaking someone down until they're completely dependent.
Exactly. And you have to remember the power dynamic here. Diddy, with all his money and fame, he had all the power.
And she was this young artist hoping to make it in the industry where he was at the top.
Right. Incredibly vulnerable. And her lawsuit, along with everything else that's come out about Diddy, it really forces us to look at how these systems work, how they protect powerful men and often exploit others.
It's pretty bleak. Ventura also talks about the aftermath, the The anxiety, the health problems, the trauma.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something we can't forget. Abuse, it leaves these lasting wounds, psychological scars that can take years to heal. And it's not just about the physical violence either. Emotional and psychological abuse can be just as damaging.
So you got Ventura's lawsuit, then Jones and Richard come forward with similar allegations, the feds get involved, charges are filed, and Diddy's world is imploding, basically. But he keeps saying he's innocent.
Yeah, he keeps denying everything. And it's not just the denials, it's also the way he's trying to discredit his accusers. Even reportedly tried to bribe some of them to support him publicly. It just makes the whole thing seem even more suspicious.
And then you have his family standing by him. It's hard to understand, isn't it?
It is. You have this image of Diddy as a loving father, generous, involved in charities, and then you have these awful accusations. It's hard to reconcile those two things.
It's like the more famous and successful someone is, the harder it is to believe they could do something terrible.
Right, but this case, with all the evidence, the investigation, it makes you question everything. It reminds us that power can corrupt anyone.
So where does all this leave us? What happens next?
Well, the trial is supposed to start in May. And that'll be a big moment, obviously. It'll have a huge impact on Diddy's life, his career, everything. But even beyond that, I think this whole thing has already changed things.
How so?
It's changed how we see the entertainment industry, how we think about power, about who we choose to celebrate. And it's a reminder that we can't just be passive consumers. We have to be critical. We have to hold people accountable, even the ones we admire.
That's a good point. So this isn't just a celebrity scandal that we can just gossip about and forget.
Definitely not. It's a wake-up call. It's about recognizing abuse, confronting it, and not being silent.
Well, this has been a really intense deep dive. We covered a lot. And like you said, it's definitely a lot to think about.
It is. It's a story that makes us question a lot of things, and hopefully it'll lead to some real change.
Thanks for being here and for sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking those questions and don't be afraid to demand better.